Volodya Gusak, welcome to Careers That Matter. And you have a very interesting career, especially in a city that desperately needs to continue to build to house people. What do you tell people you do for a living when they meet you? What is your job?
A very interesting question. It's a very difficult one to describe, but the way that I describe is I borrow from a friend who once described it to us based on what we do. And he said, if you guys are like the Boeing, you build airplanes. Says, I'm more like Air Canada, I fly them. And so we build real estate, and we're a merchant developer. So we develop and then we sell that real estate on to the next party who will operate that.
Is that what merchant developer means? Oh, okay. So you build it and then you sell it on to whoever's going to operate it.
Correct.
It's a complex business these days, especially here in Vancouver, but maybe I only see it through the lens of Vancouver. Is it complex anywhere in North America?
Well, I think it's complex anywhere in the world, not
Yes.
just North America. I think it is obviously more complex in cities that are larger and more world-class cities. It's more complex because the planning required to make good decisions is substantially higher than it would be in a rural area where you put in a different use and it doesn't conflict with your neighbors. It doesn't really make anybody unhappy. But trying to have everyone agree as to what it should be, what's the highest and best use for a particular property, that's difficult to do.
So you're talking about making good decisions. So I think, okay, you have money that you can invest, and you say, okay, I'm going to buy that piece of property, and you have to own it before you can start to develop, or at least have the option. So you have frozen money that you can use, and then you have to go through this long process. Doesn't the process make you say, this isn't worth it, that you want to look somewhere else? Because I think that that is one of the fears.
You know, you're absolutely right. A lot of the fears come from that, and I think the capital that travels to real estate, it is picky, and that is, it decides to go where the highest yield is.
Yes.
What I mean by that is, if you look at the capital flow when there is higher yield in bonds, higher yield in stocks, it has less appetite for real estate development in particular. It might have real estate holding appetite from REITs and other investment vehicles like that. But for real estate development, especially for merchant, there's a lot less of that if there is availability of that higher yield somewhere else. But in today's market, we don't have that many options.
No, I guess not. I don't look at it from that perspective because I'm not in that business. I think, well, wouldn't I just put my money somewhere else? But you're right. You're invested in it, and this is your business.
Right. And if I may, I want to add another thing. Why do people have businesses? Why do we start businesses? It's usually to solve somebody else's problem, to solve a problem. We don't do this for any other reason. Now, how do we solve a problem? If there is a problem with housing, then there will be developers solving those problems.
You just reminded me of something that somebody told me just the other day. They asked somebody, how do you become a billionaire? And the answer was, well, you solve $1 billion problem.
Right. It's exactly like that.
Okay. Well, that's an interesting thing. So, your company, what's it called?
Density Development.
Okay. How long have you been in business?
2 years now.
2 years. How many projects you got on the go?
We have 8 right now.
8.
Yes.
Okay, so that's a fair bit of capital that you've got tied up in developing those projects. When you look at your company and the management of it, what does a day for you look like as you wind your way through, needing to meet your financial obligations, handling the myriad different details?
Well, I think it's important to note that I don't think that anybody on their own does everything, and so it's the support of your team, the support of your partners is very important, and the day-to-day.
This is so true, so true. Yeah.
I don't think we'd be in business when you hear, I could see a surprise in your face that only 2 years we have 8 projects, but you have to appreciate why did that come. My business partners are, Gary Foley has been in the business for 45 years. He's set up the type of systems that allow us to produce predictable results. We've become very good at what we do, and therefore we attract business easier if we know how to solve those problems that we've talked about.
Yeah.
And if you have the right team. So for example, our development managers are all, at this point in time, all of them are architects by training.
Yeah.
I'm not. I could not do what they do.
Right.
So
what discipline do you bring to your role in the company?
My background is accounting. I'm a CPA CA, and this is where that's how my education process got me to. However, I've always seen myself more as an entrepreneur than an accountant, and I went into accounting for a very specific purpose, and that is to become an entrepreneur. And somebody once made a joke type of answer, said, accountants are like doctors, but for companies. And that's it. They had me. I thought, okay, great. If I can identify where the problems are and solve them quickly, I need those tools. No different than earlier on learning English. And it's not to become an interpreter, it's to be able to live in a country like Canada.
Mm-hmm. Well, when I was growing up, I thought being an accountant was the most exciting business in the world. I'm not joking. And the reason for it is my father was an accountant, but he was actually a better storyteller than maybe he was an accountant. I can't speak to his accounting skills, but he was such a good storyteller that I became a storyteller, not an accountant, because if he could convince me that accounting was the most exciting business in the world, well, then...
He's talented.
Wow, he's talented.
He's talented.
But I think that it's true, and I think that you are a testament to that. You're saying, okay, because of my accounting background, I can now understand all elements of the company and what a decision here is going to do to something that happens over there. And so it becomes important.
Right.
But you didn't start out life as a young student saying, yeah, I think I'm going to be a developer in Vancouver. Let's talk about your career. How did you get started? How did you get started in this journey that becomes the place that you're at now?
Yeah, when I arrived to Canada, I came from studying in UK for 2 years, and having arrived at Simon Fraser University, I had a scholarship, and I thought that on top of the world, international.
You came from the UK,
right? I
grew
grew up
to Canada, but where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Ukraine.
Okay, so you're going to school there. Mm-hmm. What decisions led you to the UK?
There was a competition in the entire Ukraine market for all the people in high school around that time frame to be accepted into an International Baccalaureate program at United World Colleges.
Yeah.
United World Colleges are considered some of the best high school education, private high school education available. These specific colleges are predominantly scholarship-based, so very few people were paid, and the rest of us were on a full academic scholarship. And so the competition and desire to go there was always there. That was not the hard part.
Yeah.
The hard part was getting through. That came with a little bit of luck, and of course, as this is a show about careers that matter, and I can't reiterate that more enough, that you have other people supporting you. Nobody's made it on their own. And so for me, in particular in Ukraine, I had my parents were supporting me in having private teachers who were teaching me English. That is coming from a middle-income family. That was a difficult thing for them to do, very difficult. At the time when my mother was making about $100 a month to get a scholarship that was worth about $60,000 Canadian, that was a very big thing.
And this was a national competition.
Right.
And
I was the only one from Ukraine to make it through, and went to UK in Wales, United World College of the Atlantic.
In Wales?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So what was that like? You show up there, what was that like?
Oh, it was scary, it was fascinating, it was an emotional roller coaster.
Because you're alone.
You're alone.
That whole support network that helped
Right.
get you to that point isn't there any longer.
I'll throw you one more. The hardest part was that I thought I spoke English until I arrived.
Well, do they speak English in Wales? I'm joking. Of course, there are a lot of people who do, but they also speak Gaelic, and so that accent is quite different.
But this was a private school where we had many international students. We had about 250 students and over 70 different nationalities.
Yeah.
And so this was a really rather big mix of various nationalities. And in my dormitory, we had 3 other guys. So there's a lot of learning about how to socialize with people, how to solve the most immediate of problems.
But that is part of career development as well, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Because without those social skills, how do you have the team?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that it's if you're exposed to it early and you figure out how to navigate those waters, it becomes easier with time. It's better with practice.
So how long were you there in Wales?
2 years.
2 years. And then what made you go, yes, I think I'm going to go to Vancouver and go to Simon Fraser University.
Well, to be fair, I have applied for many schools across the world.
Okay.
I was accepted into American University of Paris.
Okay.
Had a scholarship from Trent University here in Canada as well, in Toronto. And Simon Fraser, we had a gentleman called Ron Heath. He was a dean of registrar. He traveled to our colleges to recruit students, and he interviewed me, and he promised me both admittance and the scholarship prior to knowing my final grades,
Yes.
which I found very impressive.
Wow.
And it was also it felt like somebody really wanted me to come. And so as I was making my decisions, as I thought about that, it was I wanted to come. I felt like.
Okay, so you're encouraged by his enthusiasm for you. How important has that been in the development of your career, that there are people that are signposts along the way that say you're going in the right direction, keep going there?
And this is the most important item. If I had to highlight the one, if you ask me, just give me one item that made a career succeed, in my opinion, it's the people who support you. It's easy to look tall when you're standing on shoulders of others, when
Yes.
somebody's propping you up there. And that's how I feel my life has been so far. And
So you complete your education at SFU in accounting? Yes, no, because, yeah.
A funny story about that. When I arrived, I don't know what I want to do. In fact, I had a rather interesting dialogue with Ron prior to arriving to Canada.
Yes.
And this was my understanding of English wasn't quite as perfect as I thought it would be. And I was accepted into an arts faculty. Now, to me, arts, if directly translated in Ukrainian, it would mean applied arts. And
Yes.
I did not quite connect the dots that arts and applied arts are very different things.
Yes.
And so I called Ron. I said, I'm sorry, but I'm not coming. I said, what do you mean you're not coming? I said, well, you put me in arts. I'm not artistic. I'm not going there. So he said, where would you want to be? I said, I don't know. What's popular? That's what I asked him.
Yeah.
This is, you have to remember, this is the year late 2000.
Excuse me.
And
Sorry.
And we're on the phone where the long distance calls are very difficult and they're very quick because they're very expensive, especially trying to call from Ukraine.
Yes.
And I remember sitting in that booth from a telephone company and kind of making that call and said, I'm not coming. I said, where do you want to be? I said, well, what's popular? I said, there are two things that are most popular right now. There is computing science and engineering. I said, okay, I'm not sure about either one of those. What else do you have? And he
Yes.
says, well, what about business? I said, well, I don't even know exactly what that means, but it sounds good to me. And so I ended up being in business faculty, not because that was the plan. There was no linear progression.
Wow. That's interesting, because the relationship in the business community would be different in the Ukraine than it is here, especially when you're just in the early post-Soviet era. People are still figuring things out.
Absolutely. Well, actually, one of the fascinating things is when we have discussions within our office where we speak to other people and we talk about markets and how the markets go up, down. We have bubbles that we always discuss, especially in real estate. When I look back, and I was a young kid when the Soviet Union collapsed,
Yeah.
but it did leave an impression, because I remember thinking, well, how is it that now I have these, one type of currency, I believe it was rubles and small coins, that you go and buy a loaf of bread. The next thing I know, you need to have 10 times as many. The next thing you know, you need 100 times as many. And before you know it, we're into a coupon cutting territory where the
Yes.
currency completely collapsed. And to think that type of thing cannot happen, it can happen, and it can
Yes.
happen in any country in the world. And nobody is immune to that. Nobody thought prior to collapse of the Soviet Union that it would have.
Right.
But it teaches us something. And
So you finish studying business.
I finished studying business. I almost finished studying business. So I'm about to graduate, and I have a finance degree. That's
Okay.
what I ended up doing. And then I meet a number of people. I'm trying to explore, what can I do with this? What type of, what's the future? What's my career? What job can I get? Because I need to pay the bills.
Yes.
And so I meet at a Outstanding Alumni Awards a gentleman called Brad Bardua. And Brad was the CFO of Gateway Casinos at that time. And he
Okay.
was a CA, and that was his background. And I don't know, we just hit it off. And he said, well, if you ever needed a coffee, I'd be happy to meet with you again. And I thought, well, it's a polite thing. People say that. They rarely mean it. So I go back, and I'm thinking, but you know what? I'm going to take advantage of that, whether he means it or not. Let's see. And so
Yeah.
I reached out, and he meant it. And he actually helped me tremendously. He introduced me to many of his friends who were in the top, absolutely peak of their careers around Vancouver.
Yes.
And so I gotten to meet Peter Swinton, who was in charge of the entire audit practice at PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC. I met a number of people who had CFA designation who were running things at banks, major banks. So everybody who has achieved what I would have hoped to achieve years down the road.
Right.
And he said, well, look at them and pick something that you like. And I surprised myself because I did not think that accounting would be for me.
Yes.
And yet everybody that I met that was a CA at that time, now it's a CPA CA, those individuals were really impressive and they looked happy. And so I thought, okay, not only you're doing well, but you're also happy. I want that. So I started researching more into that. And I went back to Ron Heath, who got me into college, and I went into his office. He's a dean of registrar at that time. And I said, listen, Ron, I know I'm graduating in about a month, but I think I want to be a CA now. And he goes, well, what does that mean? I said, well, I talked to associate dean at business, and I was told that I really cannot graduate because if I graduate, I can't pick up the courses. The courses are so popular that you have a priority registration if you're further down in your degree. But if you graduate and you come back as an alumnus, then you're back at the back of the line. So that means that it would take me forever to really collect the courses to be accepted into CA program.
Complicated, yes.
Very complicated. It was a very big decision because it also would add 2 years of education to my profile, even though I could graduate right now or I can still spend some time on it. He thought I was insane. He said, why don't you go and get an MBA and call it a day? I said, no, that's what I want. And so I was working.
So you didn't quite graduate so that you could continue to go on, and you completed your studies at SFU then, did you?
I did. Yes.
And are you a CA now?
I am. CPA,
Wow.
CA, yes.
And you went through that whole process. You have to article and then take the tests
the
and the whole works.
That's right. Those are very memorable experiences as well, of course.
Why? What did you gain from that experience?
I'm a big fan and supporter of the program because of that experience that you get. I truly believe that it teaches you how to make better decisions, and the reason why I say that is because to make better decisions, you need to be taught how to make decisions in a time-constrained environment.
Yes.
It's easy if you had all the time in the world to figure out literally anything, but
Yes.
in the real world, that's never happens. And
No,
I think
it doesn't.
that, in particular, the program that I've been through is the CA program. The new program is similar to it, where every exam, everything that you're asked to do is under a time crunch situation. It's not a feel-good exam. You walk away feeling like you have failed, and the question is, well, how much did you get accomplished in that time frame? So it forces you to focus on what are the items that are important and which ones are less important. And so even in we used to have a UFI, Uniform Final Examination, you had issues that you had to identify that were primary issues and secondary issues.
Yeah.
The grades were only going for primary issues. If you addressed the secondary issue, it really wouldn't matter. It would not give you any marks.
So knowing what to study and what was important. Yeah.
And it helped tremendously because you asked, well, how did I end up going into development and leaving public practice?
Yeah.
Well, that same Peter Swinton, I had a coach in a way. He was my mentor and supporter, and he told me that if you want to develop your career faster, here's how you do this. He said, once you are designated, once you passed your exams, you have your letters behind your name, either leave right away or work your way to a manager position within the public practice firm, and then you leave into a higher role. But this is the plan. So the minute I had my letters, as they say, behind my name, I immediately left. I decided which careers and where to go. I've identified as real estate development as my top desired outcome. Construction was second, and I was fortunate enough to get the job in the first.
And was it because you identified the ability to solve problems in development that made you say, that's where I want to go?
You know, at that time, I was so oblivious as to what development meant. I only saw it from a perspective of reporting and accounting, things that I saw from the clients we worked on. I didn't know the insider workings of it. It just looked... In fact, it looked to me like as a subject that I could understand, that I could add some value reasonably quickly. I almost worked through exclusion, thinking of biotech. Well, I'm not very good at that. I will never understand how that works. Various other technologies, how to make cell phone chips or other businesses like that. That was difficult. I was always worried about those businesses because if you don't sell the product quickly, I knew that, well, it's now worthless because
it's stale dated.
Right.
Yes, right.
And in real estate, I thought, well, come on, that's okay.
Yeah, you're always going going to need it. So you left. Where'd you go first of all when you moved into the development sector?
I moved to Solterra Development Corporation.
Okay.
That's
And you took on a role in accounting.
I took on a role in accounting. That's right, accounting and finance.
Yeah.
And again, then knowing what I wanted to accomplish, and within the career, my next step, I wanted to become a CFO.
Yeah.
And so, in order to get to that next step, I had to talk to friends and find out what are the skills that I need.
Yeah.
Who do I need to meet? What subjects do I need to learn? Not everything is covered in your accounting program that you may have learned. And so I pulled off resumes of, I've asked people for, these are usually private placements, they're not widely advertised, but I asked recruiters to help me understand what are the skill sets that people look for in a CFO.
Yeah.
I started hoping to get that experience. I was very fortunate that I was given that chance through the support network. Again, it's never about me as much as, as much as sometimes it may look like you're
Right.
You're
So where'd you
speaking-
wind up? Because clearly you went, okay, I'm going to take a chance. Because every time you make a move, so you move, okay, I come out of school, I get this designation, there's a path here, and I could take it. It would be safe. But no, you choose a path that has some risk to it.
Quite a bit of risk.
Yeah,
And
by going into accounting in development. Now you decide to make another move. Where'd you wind up, and what were the associated risks with it?
Well, first, I want to address that. I think it's my risk-taking was severely mitigated and supported by my wife. Without her, there's no way I could have accomplished any of these, because this risk-taking does feel as if, if I say, well, I spent 2 more years in university, that means it's 2 more years of how do we pay the bills and how do we make that work. Now,
Yes.
I worked full-time during those 2 years as well, so that was that would help. But not having the support at home, I don't think I could take it. It would be too much stress.
Well, this goes back to we get to where we are because of the relationships that we have.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so within Solterra, I was able to progress my career because of the support that I had there. I had Mike Boza, who's the VP development there. He's explained to me so many different things about the real estate. I really got a glimpse and understanding into what real estate is all about. And I think that's when I got, as I call it, the bug. Where you
Yes.
can't just shake it, that desire, that flame that you really want to be in this industry. And that's, even though I thought I wanted to be there, I really understood why and how much I wanted to be there once I was already in the role.
Makes getting up in the morning a whole lot easier, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You must have passion too, because the jobs, as most people would think, well, if I can only find something that I really love to do, then therefore I'll never feel like I'm really working. I don't know if there's a partial truth to that, but not
Partial.
entirely,
Yeah.
because many of jobs, I would say maybe the majority of every job that we do is actually not that pleasant. The pleasant is you feel great at the outcome stage, not during the execution stage. During the execution stage, you might need to be forced to do things you'd rather not. They could be
Right.
boring, they could be tedious, they could be...
Right. Well, what's your motivation too? Because you talk about the fact that you're helping to solve problems. Well, I think the sense that you are contributing to something that is greater than yourself, so within the organization, and the organization as a whole is a contributor to the community that you call home, that's a pretty good resume to have. The details aren't so important as, am I making a difference?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So where'd you go? To get this CFO position, did you stay within the same company, or did you have to move?
No, I had to move.
Yeah.
I was actually through a recruiter who identified a position for me at a company called PC Urban, and that's where I spent 4 years. I was fairly young for a CFO. I was
Yes.
still earning my stripes and learning on the...
But you had a little gumption.
I had quite, yes, I had. Certainly can't fault
you
me
said
for lack
I-
of motivation.
Yeah. Well, these are important components. Like, there is a whole laundry list of elements that go into a successful career, and that is one of them.
And I like to read, and I think it's a way to shortcut to understanding something and having a conversation with somebody that's significantly
agree.
smarter than me, and how can I get audience with some people that you
Right.
really want to talk to, but you can't get audience with them because they're so busy.
Yes.
But books tend to do that. And one of the quotes I really like is that 5 years from now you'll be the same person you are today, except for the books you read and the people you meet.
Yes.
So
I agree.
try to live by that.
Yeah. And you joined Density just a couple of years ago.
Well, we started Density.
You started it.
That's right.
So
it was-
you joined it by starting it, which is another risk, and it's a bigger one.
It's probably the biggest one yet, for
Yeah.
sure. It was very scary. It was definitely, it was harder, even though I thought I was fully prepared, and it was a lot harder than I expected it to be. Definitely more stressful, but it's also much more exciting.
Okay, but what are the components of starting a development company? Because to have the resources to do so means that you have to attract other capital.
Absolutely.
How do you go about the business of doing that? Because let's say there's some young person watching this right now going, well, you don't look that old to me, and you were able to do it. How were you able to put together the right kind of prospectus for investors to say, you can trust that your money is safe with me?
Right.
Because that's what you have to, in essence have to offer somebody.
Absolutely. And the answer to that is you have to have a very clear product available, and also you have to have experience. And this is back to nobody does it alone.
Yes.
If I was alone, I don't think we'd be able to move as quickly as we're moving. But
Yeah.
me having the right partners, David has been in the business for over 25 years, registered architect. He is a magician when it comes to solving problems on the particular side. The kind of solutions he comes up for problem areas, I don't know anybody better. Gary has been doing it for over 45 years. The systems that we have in our shop are all through the trial and error that he's put together over that period of time. So when we attract private capital, and we usually deal with large groups who provide that capital rather than going through a prospectus and trying to solicit public money,
Yeah.
the private capital is attracted to a track record of success, experience, and having a very clear vision as to what we're doing. So our package, when we call it CIM, Confidential Investment Memorandum, when it goes to our equity partners, it's quite in depth, and it does show all the risks. It shows how we're moving forward, and it's very somewhat unemotional, but it is. It helps soothe the conscience of somebody investing the money, saying, no, these guys know what they're doing.
And so where are you at on these 8 different properties that are projects that you're developing?
At various stages, of
Yes.
course. One of them is under construction. And
So you're already above ground?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So we've actually, we have a project, Kyle Road, in West Kelowna, which is 10 acres industrial space.
Oh, okay.
And out of 10 acres for West Kelowna, it's a very large site.
Yes.
And we have first 2 buildings are fully sold, and we've poured concrete on both buildings already on the slab, and about to
And
tilt
you're going
walls.
up now.
Going up.
Wow. And your other projects?
And other projects in various stages. We're about to start. We're getting close to construction start for a rental building, which we have in Nanaimo on
Yes.
Uplands Drive,
Yeah.
which is a phenomenal location, AAA
Yes, it
location
is,
for
yeah.
Nanaimo.
Yeah.
It could be a condo site, but we made it a rental. Back to your point, when you have a situation of such low vacancy rates,
Yes.
where not everybody can afford to buy, but if, as a developer, if you can bring in a product and it does not come at a cost of any sort, and you have a choice between building condos or rental,
Yeah.
we're okay with building rental and seeing that would be a better choice for some people.
So 2 of your 6 projects you've told me are outside of the greater Vancouver area. Are you doing anything here in the Lower Mainland
We
or
are.
Vancouver? Oh, you
We are,
are.
but
Okay, so
not
you're
as
not
much.
going no to Vancouver, but
You touch on a very important point. Over the last 2 years, we've struggled to find enough projects here in Vancouver. I even made a joke within the office. Are we still Vancouver-based if most of our projects are outside of Metro? Well, our office is here, so I guess we're Vancouver-based. Vancouver has been difficult, not necessarily from just from the land perspective, because land has become very expensive, and for us it's just an input. You put it into a pro forma, and if it works, it works. Pro formas don't lie.
yes.
So the project that we have in Vancouver is in Langley on 86th Avenue.
Okay.
And it's an industrial project that will be a strata, and it is also in a rather AAA location because it comes right off 200th Street.
Yes.
So it's before the traffic gets bogged down, and anybody who has a small business that would like to have a unit, that's the location that they would probably gravitate towards. We still look for more. We'd love to do a lot more in Vancouver, but the last 2 years, as even people not in real estate are probably aware, they have been difficult to
Yes,
to
they have.
to create.
They have been difficult years. So when you look forward, because you've got a long career ahead of you, how, almost stopping myself from asking the question because nobody can predict. You couldn't have predicted that you would be where you are, not even 10 years ago.
No.
But is this the kind of business that you're saying, it is so diverse and gives me so many opportunities, it's hard for me to imagine that I'll do anything other than be in this sector?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. Because it is that diverse. The complexity of doing development is just unfathomable. You can't
Yeah.
be an expert in all the fields. You're coordinating various consultants. You're working with various teams. It's impossible to become an expert in all things. So that complexity will remain there. The other thing I'd like to say is that when you think about different industries, well, development has been in existence for, I don't care how far back you go, chances are there have been somebody
Well, at least
developing.
5,000 years, I
Right.
would imagine, because, the formation of any kind of urban environment meant that people had to develop that property.
If I'm going to make a prediction about the next 1,000 years, there's a good chance that development will exist as an important part.
I think that's a safe bet. So if somebody's looking at you going, okay, what was the most important characteristic that you think you possess that helped you to become who you are today?
I think it would be curiosity is the word that comes to mind. It's
Yeah.
researching and finding, just thinking about what else could you be doing, and how if you're truly curious, you'll do more things.
Yeah.
You won't stop at a particular point and say, okay, this is it. You will not be content.
Okay, so let me ask you a question, and this is really thinking out loud. So curiosity, yes. There's a whole bunch of people who have curiosity, but they don't have the confidence to explore that. So what role does self-confidence play?
Oh, it's a psychological question. Now, I think it is very important, of course.
Yeah.
Self-confidence is extremely important, and that self-confidence it's usually earned through experience. And
Yes.
I don't think anybody's born and goes out and becomes. The more you realize that the risk factors are not as high as they think they
Yes.
appear. Let's cross-compare two particular jobs. One person is a banker and has worked 35 years in a particular role. It feels like in the family reunion, and has got a twin brother who happens to be a taxi cab driver, right? And I had to hustle every single day to try to find the fare. Didn't really know how much income is going to come through, and found that maybe he can trade some goods or something else. He became a bit of a businessman of its own. Well, in the family reunion, chances are one is considered stable and risk averse. The other one is considered a risk taker.
Yeah.
But 2008 comes around and crushes financial industry. And now, after being for 30 plus years in this particular career, what transferable skill set do you have? Where else do you earn the money?
Right.
Versus that same particular person who was in more of a business, he's now, he's now driving something else. He's trying to find something else. He's probably creative. So I don't know if necessarily entrepreneurship or running a business is it is a higher risk when you start, but if you figure out the ingredients for it, I would argue that it may not be the highest risk endeavor.
I don't think it is. I remember talking to the president of a bank once and said, so why is it the person who works for me, who is on my payroll, is considered to be less of a risk for you than I am? The person so that person only gets one job. I go out and get hundreds of jobs from clients everywhere, and yet I'm considered to be the risk by you. He couldn't answer the question.
Right.
He was perplexed. Well, maybe he's more predictable. It was a non-answer. And so
that comes back to your confidence comment, is saying
That's
that
right.
if you dissect it down and you start seeing, okay, where does the confidence versus fear? Do you have fear? Or if there's a high risk of doing something, you should be afraid.
Yeah.
Once you understand that maybe the risk is not as high, or you imagine the absolute worst case scenario.
Right.
One of the books that had a huge impact on me is 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by
Right.
Stephen Covey. As millions, or tens of millions of people have also been affected by that same book.
Mm-hmm.
And he advises that you think about your very last days on earth, and you're saying you're on your deathbed and you look back, would you regret making that decision? When you change that framework to that, suddenly it becomes very easy to say, oh, that's not a risk, that's okay.
Yeah. Well, okay. So curiosity, some confidence that helps you deal with those risks. But we also, in the course of this conversation, talked about relationships. Well, those relationships, when they're supportive, also help to bolster your confidence. So confidence comes from a variety of different things. Yes, I have experience doing this, but I'm also given confidence by the network of people that I have around me.
Absolutely.
And you've talked quite a bit about that.
Without the support of people, I don't think you can do it.
Yeah.
It's everything would be 100 times harder.
Yeah.
When you say you have two people with diverse skill sets coming together, they can deliver value that is significantly above any individual contribution. In
Yeah.
fact, in today's world, I look around and I said, we all have iPhones, we have TVs, etc., but no one person knows how to make that product anymore. We're interconnected at another level. We're interdependent at another level.
Yeah.
We trust that there is somebody that knows how to make a particular component. We put those components together, and then it looks like a magic, really. But
That's
it
right.
works.
And we also trust that there's somebody else who knows how to fix it.
That's right.
Yeah. Because you can't fix it yourself either.
So I don't think we can overestimate the importance of friends, support, mentors in any career, no matter what you choose to do.
Yeah. And let's leave it on this note that I think that you embrace your career with enthusiasm.
Thank you.
So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
It was a good conversation.